Hello and welcome. It is book launch day, and I am super excited. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jen T. Grace. I am the founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose. And today I am with another Jen, Jennifer Rosado, who is launching your book, My Alternate Universe. Welcome.
Yes. Hi, Jen. I'm super excited.
I say this honestly in every single interview we do, but I just love book launch day because there's something so magical about all of the hard work that you have put into this book and this project finally coming to life. Like it's here,
Yeah.
and now you can kind of like bask in that the glow and glory of having done this amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it's definitely surreal. It's hard to even put into words how it feels. It's
Yeah.
very exciting, but it's also like nerve-wracking too.
Yeah. There's lots of reasons to have some nerves right now, and but that's good. Like, you're human, right? We're all human.
Yeah.
I have so many things I want to ask you, but before I do any of that, I want to, my alternate universe, it could mean a number of things. So can you just spend a minute or two just kind of sharing what your book is about?
Sure, absolutely. So my book is called My Alternate Universe: Anxiety, Autism, and Adventure in a Parallel Reality. And I got the idea for alternate universe really just organically by what happens in my life at that time. I had given birth to my son, and it really honestly felt like a different universe. Like I was the same person and I'm living in the same place, but I just felt internally like something had changed. And, I think just going on that whole idea, I started writing my blog. And that's where I kind of took that and wrote a bunch of different things about motherhood, but also about my own personal anxiety and how the anxiety impacted motherhood. And then, of course, after a few years, my son was diagnosed with autism. So it kind of all wrapped together into this, narrative that was really a whole new universe that I had to kind of navigate. And that's how I got the title. So my book is really about my emotional journey of getting to know my new universe, getting to know being a mother of a child with special needs, and then kind of taking it from there to learning to accept where I'm at, because it is a different place. It's different than my old life. And so I really had to come to terms with that and learn how to accept where I'm at, and actually, maybe become even better version of myself. So that's really where I got that from.
There's so much of what you're saying because you started your blog back in 2014. So it's been a
Yeah.
good 8 years.
Yeah.
I would imagine it might be a safe assumption to say that there's going to be some catharsis in having been writing that blog throughout the years. So what was the inspiration originally for the blog?
Well, originally I started writing it for a very selfish purpose. At the time, I think my son was about 4 years old. It had already been about 2 years since he had been diagnosed with autism. But I'd been really kind of emotionally holding a lot of things together very, very loosely. And I felt like just a sense of isolation and a loss of identity. And I really felt like I needed to kind of get it out somehow. And I started writing, and it really felt so good to put it out there, especially because I would get responses back from people on my blog, comments saying, my story is not exactly like yours, but I know exactly how you feel. And so hearing that from other people made me feel less alone. And so even though they might not have the experience of a child with autism or an experience with anxiety necessarily, there still was that feeling of connecting. And that was so hard to do at the time because my son had so many needs. I wasn't able to kind of go out and hang out with my friends like I used to and have that connection to people. And so my blog really became a way for me to reach out, and also just a way to express myself. And that in itself is cathartic, like you said, just getting it out there. So yeah, it's really been great for me to be able to express myself through my writing and to be able to connect with other people.
Yeah. And what was the transition point from I have this blog, now I want to package this into a form of a book? Like, what was the purpose and kind of direction, or was it like an aha moment? Like, how did it come up?
I had a few fellow bloggers who were, I almost consider them my mentor bloggers. They would kind of come on and encourage me and say, you really should think about putting this out there. You really should think about putting this into a book. This would be really great for people to read, especially if they're going through the same thing. Like if their parents have children with autism, they might be able to pick up that book and really feel some comfort. I even had some a doctor who kind of pulled me aside and said, I read your blog and I really enjoy it, and you should really think about putting this into a book because it's something that I could recommend to my patients that they read it, if they're going through similar, experiences. So just hearing different people say that was enough encouragement for me to say, oh, maybe I could really do this. So that's when I started to put it together and try to put it into like a narrative form, because of course, all of these were individual blogs. And so it's not like a normal narrative story that goes from one point to the next to the next. It's kind of, theme based. Each chapter had its own theme, and I just put them in chronological order in a way that made sense. So, in a way, I kind of feel like that makes it more accessible, because you could probably pick it up and read at any point in the book and get what's going on. Even if you didn't read in the beginning, you still sort of get it. So, yeah, that was kind of where I went from the blogging nature to the actually writing a book and having it be more of a traditional book.
Yeah. And I will say that, and obviously I'm biased, but this was done right? Because a lot of times there'll be someone who has a blog and they have an established following and they package it together to create a book, but they literally just kind of like copy and paste a bunch of blog posts without any thought of creating the narrative. And so I would imagine that is probably what took the majority of your time. It was kind of like connecting those dots and bridging those things together, right?
Absolutely. I actually had to write a few extra chapters, which was weird because normally I would just write chapters as I was inspired. I would write the blog post as I was inspired. So this was a little different, where I'm like, this is a hole I need to fill in the narrative. So how am I going to write this chapter in an interesting way? And so that was actually kind of fun, to have to take a certain idea of this certain point in the story and make something of it. But it definitely was sometimes challenging. So
I can imagine. So you started the blog 8 years ago. How far in was it when you were blogging that you were having these conversations with kind of your mentor bloggers who were like, you should write a book? So I'm trying to get to the bottom of how long did it actually take you to write, like how long were you sitting on this idea versus when you started to actually put it together as a book?
I would say it was about 4 years in, but I was getting, all along I sort of had people saying, oh, you should think about doing this. But I didn't take it seriously until about 4 years in. And I, at that point, took everything and put it together, made a table of contents and thought about shopping it out. So that was about 4 years in, which is 4 years ago. So it did take a while to go from that point to where I am now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a short timeline. Like there's a lot of people who, I talk to people who've been sitting on their book idea for decades, like, so for you to have take 4 years to be like, okay, I'm finally going to listen to the advice and put this into a book, to actually being here talking on publication day. I feel like that's a pretty good timeline.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your first step in the process was when you were like, okay, I have this content, I'm reworking it. Now I need to figure out how I'm going to actually get this out there and work with somebody to help me publish the book. Like what did that look like? And I like asking this question because it's such a mysterious thing for so many people, because in so many ways you really have no idea where to start. So I'm curious, what was like the first conversation that maybe you had, or the first Google search that maybe you had?
Well, the first thing that I thought about was, if I'm going to really shop this around, I want it to be the best it can be. So I had actually a friend who was an editor, and she was very excited to take a look at it. And so she agreed to edit the book. And that was super helpful because just getting that first look, getting somebody to look at it, do the grammar, the punctuation, all of the stuff that's just the basics, to make it a little bit more presentable was great. So that was my first step. But then I was like, what do I do with this now that I have it? So I went online and tried to figure out what the process was. I bought a couple of books, and, everything said, well, you got to get an agent. So then it's sort of learning how to navigate that system. And so I sent it out to a few agents, but I really felt like I didn't know what I was doing. It's really almost like a talent in itself to learn how to market yourself. Yeah. And I don't have any background in that. So, I tried that for a little while. I didn't get any responses. I tried going to independent publishers, and I thought that would be easier because you can skip the agent and you can go straight to them. And that was like a little bit more successful, where I could actually get a response from an email, which was nice. But I finally was like, this is so ridiculous that I'm spending all this time and energy trying to sell this book in this way. And then I just happened to, do a search, and I was really looking for just some way that I could publish my book that was kind of like an independent publisher, but I didn't really want to do like self-publishing because I felt like I didn't know enough to do self-publishing. So that was when I came across your website, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect because like you said in your website, that hybrid publishing is kind of like taking the best of both worlds, where you're taking the publishing world with all of the vendors and people that know what they're doing, and then taking the self-publishing. So I'm doing some of the work as an author, and then you, in the end, actually get a book that's really, really high quality, and you feel proud to put it out there. So, so that was really the process for me, going from the blogging to actually having a book. And I'm so glad that I found you guys, because you've made this process so much more pleasant and much easier.
I think that it has something to do with your personality too, where, I think that like when you come into the process and you're just, there's a sense of just gratitude for like the overwhelmingness or the complications of the process. It makes it just everybody's life a little bit easier, because it doesn't have to be hard. I tell people this all the time. It doesn't have to be hard, but unfortunately it can be, because it's just, you don't know where to get the information from. So I'm happy that we crossed paths. I was trying to think of it. I should have looked before we started going live on this, but when we first connected to like look at our timeline, because it did, like, you have really moved through this process quite quickly in the grand scheme of, authors.
Yeah, it was, I believe I reached out and we had our first conversation in August of last year. So that was August of 2021. And then I think we kind of got started sometime in September, where I actually was connecting with people. So yeah, it moved pretty quickly. I think part of it was having that first edit done by my friend really helped to kind of get me right off, on kind of like hitting the ground running, where I didn't have to go through that step. So I got to skip that original, like just getting the grammar and punctuation and all that stuff. And I could go right to the developmental editing and just kind of moving forward more quickly than maybe somebody else would. But but still I had some great people to work with. So they made the process very pleasant.
Thank you. That is honestly our top goal always, is to have just a good experience, because unfortunately a lot of people have very negative experiences in the publishing space, and I never want our name to be associated with that.
Yeah.
So we started talking in August. It is now April. We were very intentional about when this book would come out, specifically because April is Autism Awareness Month. So what, I guess, the driving force to say like, okay, let's really do whatever it takes to get this out by April. How did that feel for you, knowing that you'd be able to get this done in that, in a month where people are actually paying attention to your topic, like really paying attention?
That's what I was aiming for, was April. I was hoping for a little sooner in April, but I don't mind as long as it's in April. I really just wanted to get it out there during April and Autism Awareness Month, because I know that there's so many more people that are kind of paying attention and looking around and trying to find out more about autism. So, and it's even more important, I feel like, for for me, part of my purpose in getting this story out is that my son has severe autism, which is not as well known or well represented for obvious reasons. Now, he has severe autism. He is nonverbal, but that's not really what puts him in the category of severe. He also has, he used to have more aggressive behaviors, and he has self-injury when he has meltdowns. And so those factors alone make it more challenging. So it's important for people to realize that, first of all, you don't have to have a child who's nonverbal for that child to be severe, because it's really dependent on different factors. So, I have friends who have children who are considered severe, who are verbal, but they have a lot of these behaviors that make it a lot more challenging. It's harder for them to be independent. It can affect different ways of them being able to, be in the world. So that's important. And it's, again, for obvious reasons, this is not going to be something that's portrayed a lot on TV or in movies because it's uncomfortable. And a lot of people, parents especially, are uncomfortable talking to other people about it. I know I was for a while. It took me a while to actually write the posts about my son's self-injury, because I felt like I didn't want it to be dramatizing it or, putting it out there in the wrong way. Especially, I think for me, I didn't want people to be afraid to reach out and be part of our lives for fear of saying or doing something that might, that they might feel would trigger something. So I really felt like for a while, I didn't want to tell anybody, which added to that isolation and that feeling like nobody else is experiencing this. So when I did searches for other parents in this situation, there aren't a lot of narratives about this. So it, again, compounds that feeling of isolation. Yeah. And so I feel like getting my story out here, maybe people will read it and say, oh my goodness, yes, I'm experiencing this myself. These are the same emotions that I feel when I'm in this situation. And maybe give some hope too, because my son has made so many great improvements and growth over the past couple of years that even looking back at some of this, I'm glad I wrote it, because there's a part of me that almost forgets that where we were at, and so having this and being able to say, gosh, look at how far we've come, and giving people that hope of, yeah, you're in this right now, but things are going to get better. And here are some things that we did. And so, yeah, I feel like Autism Awareness Month is a perfect time to be talking about this and making sure that people realize that, there are different narratives of autism, and there are lots of different people that fall into that spectrum, and how it presents is very different for each individual. So you may think that you understand autism, but you also have to be aware that autism can present differently, and that needs are different across the spectrum, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and there's also, so there's the component of it that it's your story, it's your family story, right, with your son. But then there's also just the component of it being your journey in all of this. So with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, we're kind of, bridging two significant months that make perfect sense as it relates to your topic, because Absolutely. There is a significant amount that's related to your mental health and your kind of journey through this process too. So I'm curious if you want to just share a little bit more of, what was that like to, I don't know, it's exposing, right? Like, think of how it's very raw. It's very vulnerable to be sharing that level of detail with people, but it's obviously for the greater good at the same time.
Yeah. And like you had said before, it's cathartic. And that for me was healing to be able to share it, as opposed to bottling it inside. But the interesting thing was, I had a friend say to me, I don't understand why you put, for your subtitle, you put anxiety first. Why didn't you put autism first? And it's because really the primary thing at the beginning of my blogging experience and being in this universe was was my anxiety. That's really what was driving a lot of my reactions and my emotions to what was happening. And so that's really the growth in the story for me as the mom, is learning to accept things and to how to move forward with my anxiety and all the things that were happening. And so, yeah, it was actually really helpful for me to share about my anxiety, because putting it into words really made me understand it better. And even now there are things that I will write and I'll say, oh, wait, oh my gosh, and I'll make a connection to something. A lot of times it's to my son, where I'll see something about his anxiety and I make a connection to my own anxiety, or vice versa. And so it's really helpful, I think, just in understanding our relationship, my son and I. So yeah, I think sharing about the anxiety, I think, is so important, especially because I think I get more comments about the anxiety than I do about the autism. People saying, I totally get it, I feel that same way, or whatever. So yeah, I think sharing the anxiety was really super important. And it's just not just a book about autism. It's a book about me and my anxiety and my reaction to all the things that happen as a mom of a child with autism. So,
it's so good. I have one question that I'm going to save. I want to bring us lighthearted for a moment and point out over your left shoulder, I believe it is, the program we're using is reversed, so it's always confusing. That's why I'm like, it's your left shoulder. Yes.
Not used to this, yeah.
Yes. So do you want to share what that little wooden puppet thing is behind you and what its relevance to your work is?
Yeah, if you see the cover of my book, my son is laying down and he's got his hand over this little puppet. And that's actually the puppet he was playing with at the time that his grandfather took the picture. And I always loved that picture, just the picture of his face and his eyes. It's just such a beautiful picture. But when I decided to use it for the cover, the thing that kind of stuck out to me was the symbolism of a puppet, and the fact that that's kind of how I felt at the time when he was young, as a mom, just like having lost all control. Like I felt like I had nothing that I was controlling anymore. And so it kind of symbolizes this little boy who's got me. He's holding me, and I'm just this kind of little puppet. And so I kind of liked that symbolism. And so I ended up using that as the author photo on the back of my book, just kind of as a quirky way to give a nod to that picture and what it symbolizes. So he definitely has a hold of me in more ways than one. Yeah, there he is. So he's holding me. I feel like I've lost control, but he's also definitely, as you'll read in the book, he's definitely holding my heart as well. So it's on so many levels, it really just speaks to what the story is kind of about. So
yeah, it's such a good picture too. It makes a really good cover for sure.
Yeah, his beautiful face.
Yeah, so good. So I want to ask you, as we kind of are in our conclusion phase here, what is, if you were to wave a magic wand, and whether it's a month from now, 3 days from now, 4 years from now, you have someone who comes up to you and says, I read your book, fill in the blank. Like, what are they saying to you that makes it feel like all of this work and kind of this experience has been successful in your mind?
I think if anybody were to come up to me and just say that they felt a connection, that it gave them some comfort, I think that would make it all worth it. I know I had one person that came up to me and said that it made her understand her daughter better, because her daughter was suffering from anxiety and she didn't really, she didn't really understand what her daughter was feeling. And, because I speak I write in metaphor in the book quite often, I think that helps people who maybe don't understand it to understand it a little better, what the feelings are. And I do try to make it as universal as possible. So, I hope that people understand that you don't have to be a person with anxiety or a person who has a child with autism to get something from this book. That I feel like a lot of these emotions are things that, you know, everybody feels, especially one of the main things that I felt in the beginning was isolation and a loss of identity. And, you know, these last 2 years, I would say probably everybody felt a little bit of that, where you feel isolated, you feel like you haven't been able to be with your friends. And there's that feeling of loss and trying to redefine yourself and trying to find yourself again in the world. So yeah, I really just hope that that's what, you know, anybody who reads my book might get from it. And I think if they were to come up and say, you know, this really spoke to me, or I really enjoyed it, or even if they just enjoy my sense of humor, I think any of that would make me feel like this is all worth it, for sure.
That's so good. Yeah, I love just kind of seeing different people's ways that they define success. Because when I put my book out, mine was very similar to yours. Like if I just have one person feel more seen, that's a win to me. It doesn't need to sell millions of copies. It just needs to hit that one person who really needs to hear that message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything that I have not asked you that I should have asked you that you might want to mention?
No, I think we kind of touched on everything, actually. I feel pretty good about it, and I'm so excited, and I just can't wait to, you know, have people read my book. And I do want to say right now it's just in paperback version, but in a couple weeks it will come out in ebook and hardcover if you are more interested in reading it on a device that you can wait, and it will be out on a device on ebook. So yeah, I think that's it. Hopefully people will enjoy it. And I want to thank you again and Publish Your Purpose and everybody that works for you. That, you know, this has been a great experience, and I'm super excited. Never thought that I would get to this point. And so yeah, this is like a dream come true for me, for sure. So
I know that's the best part about what I do, is that like it's literally helping someone's dream come true. Like
absolutely.
How much better of a business could I feel like you could be in? Like it's
I know.
It's magical. And so your blog is still active. It's still going. So it's jennifer-rosado.com. So if anyone, it's scrolling across the bottom, if anyone wants to check it out. And as you mentioned, your book is available, you know, wherever books are sold, you can get it right now, paperback only, because we wanted to make sure that we could fit into the Autism Awareness Month, but hardcover and ebook are coming soon. So be on the lookout.
And right now it's just on Amazon, but it will be available.
Yeah, just takes a little time.
Yeah, it just takes some time. So if you're looking for it in any other store, just give it some time.
It's the spider has to kind of crawl the internet to get to all of the places. So,
yes, absolutely. It takes a little time.
It will be there in 40,000 different online retailers. So it takes a little bit for that to happen. But,
yeah.
So good. It was so nice to see you. I love this day, because it's like we get to celebrate in your success and all of this hard work, at least, you know, for 8 years, has all come to this like pinnacle, which is super exciting.
Yes, very exciting. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see everyone else at some point soon.
Yep. All right. Thank you.